All right, one of the other things that dealing with, now that we've determined the listing price, this is a very another common question is the length of the listing. Have you guys got strict requirements in place on your listing? Feel?
Well, 6 months.
I think everybody's going to say, well, market trend is 6 months.
But we tell them that if anytime they're not happy, we'll just rip it up.
Yeah. That's the mutual release. Being the statistician that I have done before, I have taken the number of days on market and what's the average days on market. And then if you do that whole bell curve distribution, you can tell 99% chance it's going to sell within so many days. Have you guys had the person, I just want to test the market out. Let's put it on for a month. That comes back to your question where I've literally have told people that. Now that I think about more often than that. More often than price, the listing time is one. Matter of fact, Barb, I think you and I had that with one of the potential clients, or
He wanted 90 days.
yeah, he wanted like a 3-month short-term listing, and we went and looked at the house that he wanted over way too much for the house that was in way too bad a shape. That would have, yeah, that would have been one that we probably would have went. Well, actually, we did write a listing for him, and he never signed it, and we really weren't that sorry that he didn't sign it.
So do you want to hear something weird with that property? His basement flooded, but it didn't have anything to do, it was his sump pump went out. But his flood insurance won't cover it because it wasn't because of a flood, and his homeowner's insurance won't cover it because he's in a floodplain. Is that crazy?
Yeah, that's just 2 insurance companies not wanting to pay. One of those, it's got to be liable for one of them. We had an issue like that with our basement wall. What, about 8 weeks ago? Basement wall cracked, flooded our basement, and we tried to get our homeowner's insurance, and we have an exclusion. Any water that touches the ground first does not count as considered a flood. And a flood is also determined by it has to affect more than one person in the same neighborhood. So basically they told us,
I heard that if you have a finished basement, you have to purchase an additional something if you want.
yeah, because that's what they told us.
Yeah, that's what
They said if the water touches the ground and runs into your house, that water is exempt from our particular insurance company. And I promised State Farm I'd never mention their name. Is that who you have? Basically what she told us was for the water to actually be covered on our insurance, it would have to rip our roof off and rain in our house. It can't touch the ground and run down the hill and run in the front door. It's got to come in the house. I said, so you want a roof claim and a water claim? Is that what you're telling me? Because I'll go take the roof off and get the claim. So terms of the listing agreement, once again, contract, offer, counteroffer. Typically, we always issue 6 months. That seems to be a generic one. In the commercial world, which I do occasionally, 1 year. It's not uncommon to have a 1-year listing in the commercial world because the number of buyers become less, so you want more time. And that can all be checked because I think the average days on the market right now are like, 143, 145? I mean, if you do the math, that's like 5 months.
How do you find that? Is that in my board?
Yeah.
Say it just flat out, average days on market? Or
Yeah, DOM. You can look up the DOM. And what I did, and I think what they do, they actually put out something every month.
So they just send it out?
Yeah. But one of the ways to do it is that inside of your, pull an area that you want, geography with a little map, do all the solds in the last year. All the solds in the last year will have you a DOM. Export that to Excel, total that column, and then determine the average.
Or you can find them on quick CMA and it gives you an average of all.
Okay. Sure, there's that way. Yeah, take the easy way out.
I didn't use the old system, so the new one's the only one that I know.
Oh, yeah, that's probably a better way under the new system. Hopefully it gives you the same answer. So that I do like about Excel is there are some other formulas that you can use, statistical formulas that I'll tell you What's the standard deviation? So that way you can figure, hey, if it's 120 days, within 190 days, there's a 90% chance it's going to sell. Sort of. Well, yeah. Yes, I am. That's the math person in me. Remember that we have also different types of listings. Has anybody done any exclusive right to sell? Nobody's done an exclusive agency yet? Exclusive agency, man, there's an exception to the exclusive agency. What's the exception? Exclusive right to sell, which is the big mamaluca. That's the form we have across the top. Exclusive right to sell. I get paid no matter what, right? The fact that I got the person to list the contract makes me the, what's the word we're looking for? Makes me the procuring cause. Remember that even though in the real world, we know they called me and go, hey, Raymond, I want you to list my house like Brent did. The state looks at it as though I convinced him to sell his house and I convinced him to sign the document. Therefore, I'm the procuring cause under the exclusive right to sell, which means when we get an offer, no matter where it comes from, paid. Have you guys also exemptions? We can put exemptions in there. Have you guys exempted anybody yet? We did a house where we sold it. It was a for sale by owner. He listed the house. He said, look, I'm not obviously having any luck. We want you to sign, we want to sign a listing. So we signed a listing. But he said, you know what, I've talked to my neighbor across the street now a couple different times who wants his mother to buy the house. And he goes, I really don't want to pay you if they buy. So, okay, I understand that. So we signed an exclusive right to sell and then exempted that specific person for like the length of the contract. And you guys can do that. So I get paid no matter what, unless Mary Alice Johnson buys the house, because that's one that he is already programmed in. And when you do that, my advice to you is exempt them for a certain amount of period of time. You know, the first 3 months of this, we will exempt her. After that, she's going to become our client, because there's probably means we're going to have to do something like show her the house one more time or something like that. So you can list them and even just exempt them for the first 30 days. After that, she's going to go into the regular pool. So that is still an exclusive right to sell with an exemption. And you can exempt people that way. The next one down would be the exclusive agency, which has a permanent exemption, which says what? Says I get paid no matter what, except what? Except that the owner finds the buyer. All right? And now we start getting into those questions again that we just talked about, Barb. You know, if the buyer drives by and sees your sign in the yard and they call the owner, did they know, are you the one that really brought the, you know, there's always that question. They only knew that you were selling it because they saw my sign, so technically, am I the procuring cause? Or did they just happen to randomly ask you if you were selling your house? I've sold probably 3 or 4 of these, listed 3 or 4 agencies. Most of the time, it is a placation or to placate the for sale by owner. That's the best time it's ever used. You get a for sale by owner. We call those a warm lead. When you guys first started, you had 2 types of warm leads: expireds and for sale by owners. A warm lead is someone that wants to sell their house, but they're not using you. So you got to find out why and how to get them to use you. For sale by owner is a very common one that you go and knock on the door. Hey, I'm Raymond. I want to sell your house. And he says, well, I don't need your help. I've been selling houses all my life. Okay, I'll tell you what to do. Let's make a deal. Let me do an exclusive agency, which says if I bring the buyer, I get paid. If you beat me to the deal, you don't have to pay me. Knowing full well that we got a much better chance because we have access to the MLS. We can put stuff in the MLS. We can get it on Zillow. Probably already is on Zillow. So that is one way to get them to kind of, if they won't bite on the exclusive right. Okay, how about this agency thing? Let's try that. So that's always a good one to have in your back pocket at the last minute to use. The other agency, open agency, says you get all of it or nothing. Some of you have been in my class before. Did we actually talk about the reason when this would be used? Open agency. Open agency says if I bring the buyer, I get paid. The key is the seller can enter into as many open agencies as he wants. All right? So when would it be good, though? The best case scenario that it would actually be is when you see houses that are sufficient weird or good, depending on how you want to look at it, that it may draw people out of other areas. And the best example that I went to and I used one before would be like a cabin in Brown County. Because the buyer could come from Columbus, which is a different MLS. That's the Jackson Board of Realtors. The buyer could come from Bloomington, which is the Bloomington Board of Realtors, or the buyer may come from Indianapolis, which is the MyBor Board of Realtors. So that would be a great example of when the seller wants more exposure that he could potentially bring all of it. It would never really work with two agents in the same board. Now, I am a member of Bloomington, and it works very similar insofar as same as our MyBor. Once I list a property, it lists by tax ID number. You guys couldn't even list that property. You would put that tax ID number in and say, I want a new listing in the MLS. Put the tax ID number, it's going to say it's already listed. So they won't let you put it in. So that's an unfair advantage to anybody that's the first one to get it in the MLS in an open listing. But like the example I showed you, I would put it in MyBor. I would get all of the MyBor exposure, where someone else would put it in Jackson County because they could put it in a different database. Even though it's the same tax ID number listed in MyBor, it's not listed in their MLS system. So it would work really well for things like that. Or like Simon's house that went up for sale at $25 million. You know, it may come out of Chicago area, Abu Dhabi. Yeah. It's tough getting a sign in it from there, but. So there is probably one or two examples in your career that you may see the open listing work and work really well. And it's basically determined by what MLS system it's going to go in and where they want to market, where the potential buyer's coming from. Okay? This next section I want to talk about is something that we did when I first started. I don't even do it with my agents now, and I bet you guys don't even do it. When I was a Coldwell banker and we started a listing, my principal broker, we had a list of words that we were not allowed to use in any marketing material unless our seller signed off on the list of words. One of the words we were not allowed to use, you guys probably use all the time now, motivated. We had to get permission to use that word.
So is that allowed or not?
Technically, in my opinion, that's not a good word, and you shouldn't use it.
See it all the time.
I know,
Everywhere.
because it indicates a ability to, it hampers a person's ability to negotiate. And that's what I was saying. When we had it, that was a word that we had to have our buyer, our seller, we actually had a list of words that the seller would say, and it was like 12 words with a checkbox. And he literally would say, okay, you can say motivated. I have no problem with that.
Your broker does that?
Do what?
Your broker when you started out?
Yes, with Caldwell Banker. Yeah. What was a couple of the other words? Short sale at that time was real new. I mean, you're talking 99. So, you know, we had to use that. Motivated, foreclosure, all of those words we had to get permission from because they affected the way you would advertise a property. I'm betting that you guys don't do that now. Use those, don't get permission to use those words. Yeah.
So if you see in a listing that says possible short sale, that just means that the person's behind on their
That would be a good indication.
Then they need to dump out the house when you're on Lizette.
It's probably a foreclosure that hasn't been done, hasn't been finished yet.
Well, it's definitely a foreclosure that hasn't been finished yet. Because if it was finished, it wouldn't be a short sale anymore.
Are those even worth showing to people?
Are they even worth showing to people is the question from the front. No. I don't like doing short sales. I don't like being the listing side on a short sale, and I don't like being a selling side. 90% of all sellers are moving for a reason. Very few have the ability to go, okay, we're just moving because we want to. So we can wait 8 months.
If it's like a rental, gonna be used as a rental.
Well, I meant there are people, for example, that say, hey, I'm in an apartment and we want to buy a house. Okay, I can extend my lease month to month or 6 months. Those people are okay. Or somebody that maybe owns their house free and clear and can still get a mortgage and can wait. But like Brent, my client that's buying now or that's selling now, he's got to move, has to move to Arkansas by March the 21st. He is not going to look for a short sale because otherwise what he's going to end up doing is moving to an apartment, then moving from the apartment to the house. He wants a house that he knows he can close on in a period of time so he can move directly from this house directly to that house.
See the guy moving up to Arkansas? You said?
Yeah.
So does he have to sell his house first before he can move to Arkansas?
No, he does not. He's got a real low mortgage on his house. Yeah. He does not have to sell.
Position for you to be in.
Yeah, it really is. It's helped us out in some of our offers, but because his issue is a job that he has to be down there. And one of the things we talked about house, he could have if he didn't get an offer that was close and his wife was going to stay here and he was going to go down there if we didn't get it sold, but we got it sold. But I mean, he can't go down and put an offer in on a short sale down there because now that he's going to be going down with a moving truck, he's going to want to move into a house. So that's another one. Social media pictures. You guys put pictures on social media. Technically, you should have permission for that. Now, they grant you permission when they sign the listing, but you should also be very careful on some of the stuff in your marketing campaign. One that I saw the other day, somebody sent to me, they had taken pictures inside the house, and like on the kitchen table, you had to really zoom it in to look at it. It was like their electric bill that had like their account number and all that. You really would have had to have been looking to go, oh, that's an electric bill, and take the picture and zoom it up to see their account number and all that.
Social media, so
Yeah.
there's all kinds of freaks out there. I've been that out.
I've been asked to edit pictures hanging on the walls, blur them out. So
Yeah.
you can't see whose house it is.
Blur them out. Yeah, no kids. You don't want pictures of kids and stuff like that.
Take their name off the wall.
Yeah.
I've
I actually had that happen about 8 years ago. I've had it happen one time where I've listed or was working with the buyer and we went into a house and we're walking through the house and I'm standing there and I'm like, that's David. Who owns this? And I knew the guy that owned the house simply because of the pictures on the wall. I'm like, hey, that's David Johnson. I know him. And that's whose house I was in. I didn't even really look at the owner when my client picked him out. We just scheduled the showings, went in. I'm standing there looking at the pictures. Hey, I recognize that guy. The new thing out, and if you guys are all on my side, have you been listening to any of the podcasts?
The drone.
The drone. That's a big no-no right now, guys. Do not do the drone pictures.
You can't?
No.
Not yourself or not even hire anybody.
Yep. If you hire somebody, they have to make sure they have what's called an Exemption 333 and a pilot's license. Currently, they have to have a pilot's
Is
license.
that just drones in general, or is that real estate drones?
No, that's drones in general.
So that's a state thing they passed?
No, that's a federal thing they passed.
Federal?
Yes, you have to have a minimum, what's it called, recreational pilot license. Yeah. I can go out and play with mine, but the first time I use it for commercial application, which means I've used the picture for anything, I can't even use the picture of my own house on YouTube. It's a $35,000 fine per picture. They got a guy in Chicago for like 280 grand in fines. There's already a couple people that I have seen that have posted pictures on the MLS of oh, it was a good day. I had my drone out, and they got a picture of the house, and I sent them an email. Hey, you might want to listen to this podcast. It's not me talking. It's actually a guy from who was it? Some Gowdy Brothers Aerospace. That's what they do, is they help people get licensed. And he went through all the regulations and talked about there's.
They don't make that more known to people, because there's people all over here that, you know, they buy those ones for $200 at the store and they go fly it around and take aerials of their listings.
Yeah, they do that. I think the FAA thinks they've made it known, because the rule is got to have a pilot's license, period. No exceptions. And then there's a lot of people that keep saying, well, yeah, realtors are exempt. No, there are no exceptions. None, according to this guy.
So if a company emails you and says, hey, we're offering this service in Indianapolis now, why don't you hire us? It's your job to question it.
Yes, your first question back to them is, who's the operator? Does he have a pilot's? And it has to be the operator. That's the other thing.
It's your own listing.
Oh, the fine would go to you. Yeah. Now, I'm companies out there that are licensed, but you would be on you to actually ask, are you licensed? Do you have a pilot's license? And one of the questions I asked this gentleman was, can the boss be licensed and his workers? No. The actual operator has to be a pilot's licensed person, which means they got to go to ground school, they got to pass all of that, and hold a recreational pilot's license at a minimum to fly a drone for commercial. FAA is already hitting them. Anywhere from $10,000 to $35,000. Go in and Google drone fines. There was a professor at, can't remember, Boston College, one of those, who was also a drone pilot, had a drone club, they did it. Video flying through Boston College, and I think it's, don't remember, from an aerial showing the college, and he came down, beautiful video, underneath the walkway and went through the campus. FAA fined him $90,000 for that. He argued it, they went to court, they lowered it down to 35. But, and it was, he just did it out of the goodness of his heart to show how much he liked the campus. He didn't make money off of it, nothing. Still fined him 35 grand. So just be careful when you're dealing with that kind of marketing. This next section says what? Fair housing laws. That's like a 3-hour conversation that we can have all day. So I don't think we want to have a repeat of class. So let's talk about something else in fair housing. Have you guys had any issues yet? Seen any questions yet? Nothing? You guys are doing it wrong then, if you have no questions. What's the Hispanic agency that's all their signs are in Spanish? Is that a violation of the fair housing law? By the definition, remember that one paragraph that I highlighted? Ads in the Korean language tend to discriminate against non-Korean speaking people. Duh. First of all. So, I mean, it's hard to not violate that rule. So just be careful about your blatant, anything that would be blatant, like my guy from the Martinsville that didn't want to sell to any apples, if you remember that story. If you've not seen that story and you're listening at home, email me and I'll call and talk to you about that, but we're not going to go over that apple story again. Obligations. Obviously, everybody has an obligation to perform their listing. You can sue for specific performance if your client doesn't perform. I told the story the other day. I had a client that wasn't going to sign the listing, signed the closing docs. We listed the house, sold the house, closing, he wasn't going to show up. I had to threaten a lawsuit with him from the other side, which I would have joined into, to make him do his obligation or his duty to come and sign the closing. He just can't decide, I don't want to do it. Okay? So make sure that you understand that you guys have certain obligations in your listing. And remember, we have 6 of them to our client. You remember what they are? Cold AC. These are your 6 fiduciary responsibilities to your client. These are all the ones that you owe to them. Care, obedience, loyalty, disclosure. Care, you have to exercise reasonable skill and care. One of the things that can be attributed to you is getting the right listing price. Did you get the right listing price? I had a guy that was mad at me, a client that was mad at me. We sold a deal. We listed his house and we got like an offer in 3 days. And he was mad at me.
Too low.
It's too low. At least that was his opinion, because I had to, you accepted my advice. Well, you should have been higher. You should have done a better job. So
Decline the offer and raise the price of the house.
he had already accepted the offer. Nobody wants their own responsibility. It's got to be somebody else's fault. So I'm just thinking another one is zoning issues. Make sure that you have the right zoning for doing what you're doing or doing what you want to do. Obedience, do what your client tells you to do unless it violates any of the federal laws. Back to the Apple story again. You know, you cannot discriminate. You cannot discriminate based on one of those protected classes. So for them to tell you, I don't want you to sell it to any of those so-and-so, that's your job to make sure. Loyalty. Loyalty is not a big issue on this lister when you're a listing agent. When we talk about the buyer's agency agreement, sometimes the loyalty starts coming into question. You know, this house only pays 1% BAC and that house pays 4%. Which one do I want them to see first? You know, we'll talk all about that. Disclosures. You've got to make sure that you disclose certain things. Here's a new thing that's come about that's been a big contention several times. Let's tell me what you guys would do. You've got the listing. You have an offer. You get a home inspection. The home inspection says it's got mold in the property. Buyers want out. You let the buyers out. Put the house back on the market. What do you disclose?
Well, you know now that it does.
Do you disclose it or do you not? There was just a recent court case with a ruling from the ethics committee. That's not the word I'm looking for. What's the committee that my board has where you go down in front of the, I can't remember right now, where one of the clients, exact example, A lists the property for client, doesn't get an offer, or gets an offer, has a problem, buyer goes away, listing expires. Client goes to listing agent B, who puts the house back on the property, doesn't disclose the problems that listing agent knew. So listing agent calls listing agent B and says, hey, you need to put this up on the property. But client actually sued listing agent A under the rules of confidentiality or disclosure, said you shouldn't talk to him and tell him that about this. They ruled in favor of listing agent A.
Yeah, because listing agent A has the right to do that.
Yeah.
Because they're not under agency, right?
That's not what they found, but yeah, basically that's it. Yeah. Well, confidentiality you keep forever. It's disclosure that he got out on, because he said it should have been disclosure.
Well, what do you legally have to do if you are the homeowner?
You should have disclosed that you had a problem.
What if listing agent B knows that they should but doesn't make them do it? Is listing agent B at fault?
Yes. If listing agent B knows there is a problem with the house and doesn't disclose it, and you can prove he knew, then he could be in trouble. And that was what listing agent A was trying to do, was call listing agent B and said, hey, you understand there's a problem with that house because I was the previous listing agent. We know there was an issue. You better talk to your client because I don't want to see you get caught in this. And when B approached the client went haywire and filed a suit against A saying, you know, it's not your business to get involved in my agency with B.
But A was found not guilty or not in.
Yeah, not in violation of the ethics rule.
So what if the homeowner, let's say.
If I can find that, I'll pull it back out. MIBOR sends those out occasionally. Do you guys read those? You guys literally should read all those emails. You get an email, and there was one, a case study about once a week, once every other week. You guys ought to read those. Those are actually really good. And
If the homeowner remediates the mold before they list it again.
I don't know. That's probably a bad example because mold seems to give people a reason to freak out. If you would tell me that he had a hole in the roof and A fixed the hole in the roof, I would say, yeah, you wouldn't disclose that. Personally, I would also say if he remediated the mold, he wouldn't have to disclose that.
What if the basement
But
flooded?
some people have the belief that mold can't truly be remediated, that you only kind of clean it and it's going to come back later.
So that would apply to a basement flooding. So if someone's basement flooded 2 years ago and now they're listing it, but the insurance came in and took care of everything, they don't have to disclose it.
Well, the actual act of flooding, I don't think is a violation, but if it caused mold,
Right.
that might be, because remember on the disclosure, is there any mold in the house? That's one of the things they check.
But if there's not a design, it's
Right. Although, does the question say, has there ever been mold in the house, or does it say, is there mold in the house? Yeah.
But I thought if anything was wrong and remediated, you didn't have to disclose it, it would be repaired.
I agree with you. I agree with you 100%. And I'm telling you, there are agents out there that, for some reason, are black and white with things that seem obvious, like a hole in the roof. You ask any agent about a hole in the roof, and if you fix it and put new tar paper on, do you disclose it? And they're like, well, no, why would you do that? You ask the same agent about mold, and all of a sudden you'll see them go, because for some reason people think mold's a gray area, that you don't really remediate it. I don't believe that. I believe once it's remediated, you don't disclose it. That's my personal belief. That's my advice to my client. We had mold, we don't now. We had a hole in the roof, we don't now.
The example I gave yesterday that we had talked about how my client had put an offer on a house and they declined it and they listed it with somebody else and ended up selling to the same price that we offered.
Right.
We had an inspection done on the home and found out like the entire subfloor was rotted and it was leaking into the crawl space. And that's why they released us, because they said, we're not fixing any of that stuff and we're not lowering the price.
Yeah.
Then they fired their agent and hired a new one, and they told that agent that they knew that that stuff was wrong, but they didn't want him to put it on the system.
So that the new guy should have. Yeah.
Yeah.
You didn't have any choice once they told him.
Well, that's what they tried.
If it's a material defect, he has to disclose it.
Right, that's what they tried to say, was we don't want you to put it
And
on.
see, I guess that's kind of where I was talking about this rule. So what they did is he would be A in that particular situation. They hired a new agent B, didn't tell the new agent B that there was a defect, and that's where A then called B and said, hey, there's a problem with that house because I know, did they tell you, because I noticed your listing does not have it as being a defect. And that's when the client, in that example that you gave, would have sued the first agent saying, you violated your Article 1 of the, that you,
I wasn't agent A, I was the buyer's agent.
yeah. I'm not saying you were, I'm just saying in that example, that would be exactly what that MIBOR,
Home with a guy from our
yeah.
office. So I was a buyer's agent, and they relisted it with someone from our office, so I'm like,
Okay.
When you have a deal on a house, right, if the house gets inspected and they do find something, and the owner says, screw it, I'm not doing it, I'm not fixing it, and the people walk away from it. Since that inspection is actually documented, does it have to go in the file somewhere?
No, because it's not my inspection.
Okay, that's what, okay.
And there's been questions about that too. When as the selling agent, you have an inspection done, you ask for certain things repaired. You have the option of giving only that page to prove there was a problem, or you can give the whole report. Now, the belief is, and I don't follow this subscription either, the belief is even though the buyer gives the seller the report, it's still the buyer's report. They're the ones that paid for it. So that if it comes to another one, the seller doesn't necessarily get to use it. My belief is if the buyer gives me the report, it's my report. That would be like me giving you $10, and if whatever you do with the $10, I really can't complain because I voluntarily just gave you the $10. There was a big thread on my Facebook page about this exact question. Whose report really is it? It's really the buyer's report, but in my view, if they give it to the seller, like the one we just had, the buyer gave us the whole report, but only asked for the roof to be fixed. So we literally saw everything, and I think the mindset is from the buyer, why would they do that? That's a good question.
Look at everything that's wrong, and we're only asking you to fix it.
Exactly. That's my belief on why they did that. They gave us the whole report, all 42 pages, and only asked for the roof to be fixed. My belief was they wanted us to see 18 or 19 defects that were found, and we're only asking for one.